argue because I like to argue.
We all underestimated how hard it is to, one, win college football games, and two, transition and take over a program.
Mike Schaefer.
I was trying to kindly tell Mr. Bishop the Vikings have a chance to surprise some people, and I think that they could even win the division.
Mike Schaefer.
It doesn't seem like the kind of book where they would be hooked on meth. That got dark.
Mike Schaefer.
I'm going to violate what is a no-no in our business, but I do it all the time anyway, and that is I'm going to bring an off-air conversation on the air. Schaefer was just making a point as his open hit about, the Vikings don't even know if they're good or not. Let me speak on behalf of someone who was irrationally triggered on Sunday afternoon. The Vikings suck, and I wish they would just end this right now. And the reason I say that is we had the Rams-Cardinals game had just started, and when you watch the Red Zone channel, you are dependent on how many other games are happening simultaneously, and every other game had come to an end. But no, the Vikings had to let the Jaguars back into the game. And then not only that, the overtime was literally, for a 10-minute overtime, it felt like 10 hours. And meantime, the Cardinals score and the Rams are struggling and I'm losing my mind and they're not showing me any highlights of the game. And so I'm sorry, Schaefer, I was a little triggered by the Vikings because they should have put away the Jags a lot earlier and saved me that misery.
Yeah, I guess, am I supposed to disagree with any? Like the 1-10 Jacksonville team goes into Minnesota and the Vikings have to eke out a squeaker. And when did they trust Dan Bailey? Was it at the 6-yard line when they kicked at the end? I don't even think so. They didn't want to kick when they were at the 2. So I think that the Vikings, really made that a game when it didn't need to be. And on behalf of all purple people, we apologize that you missed Dan Arnold's touchdown and Arizona's only real offense on the day. I'm sure that was very disappointing.
Also, I bet Vikings minus 10, so apologize for that as well.
No.
But by the way, speaking of our teams, there's like an evil little triumvirate here of bad kicking, right?
Yes.
So you mentioned Dan Bailey, former Cowboys kicker. They don't trust him to make a 20-yard field goal. The Rams got rid of Zerline, who then has decided to just totally suck for the Cowboys. And the Rams, meanwhile, are on their third kicker. So there's like this evil triangle of a Bermuda Triangle of bad kicking that involves all of our teams right now.
Well, did either of you have Blair Walsh? Sure. No.
Touché.
Where does that one rank, Schaefer, for you in terms of like horrible, despicable playoff losses? Is it not as high because it was the first round?
Yeah, I mean it's high. It's higher after the fact because it was the only playoff game I got to see with Teddy Bridgewater, who you guys know that I love. And if he hadn't gotten hurt before the start of the 2016 season the way that he did, I think he's still Minnesota's quarterback. And I think they're a lot better team in part because he wouldn't be as expensive. They could probably do some other things. But so that one after the fact really hurts. And they were a good team. Like that was the 2015 Minnesota defense was really, really at its apex. And then after that, the all-timer is a Brett Favre interception because I don't know if I've ever seen a team dominate a game as much as they did against Michael Severe's Saints and still lose. And then you throw in all the other things that happened with it, like some real questionable officiating, whether it was the pass interference calls or the 4th and 1s or the whatever it is. So, and if there's any Saints fans listening, I don't mean this to be personal, but I will never, and I mean never, get tired of watching your team lose in the most horrible fashion. Whether it's Kyle Rudolph on the touchdown, whether it's Stephon Diggs in the Minneapolis Miracle, whether it's the guy from the Rams tackling the receiver 7 seconds too soon, and Greg Zuerlein, the aforementioned Greg Zuerlein hitting like a 60-yard field goal to put the Rams in the Super Bowl. I will never, and again, I want to be very clear, never be tired of watching your team lose in the playoffs ever. And it's personal. New Orleans is a great place. Been down to the Superdome. It's fantastic. It's just when it gets to being January and when you're rolling Taysom Hill out there and you lose here in a couple of weeks on Christmas to the Vikings, and then you have to play in the first round because you don't get a bye anymore because there's 7 teams in the playoffs, and Sean Payton stumbles out of the gates again in January, just know that one Mike Schaefer, regardless of whether his Vikings are involved or they're left for dead, is going to feel immense joy. Just utter joy. Unless you're playing the Packers, and you damn well better win.
I love you, man.
You almost hate them more than the Packers at this point.
No,
Are they your number 2 most hated team?
in the NFL?
Yeah.
Man, that's tough. So, kind of, but it's such a weird, because like the Saints don't bother me if it's a regular season. Like I don't particularly like them. They have players on their team that I don't think are remotely likable. Michael Thomas at the top of that list. Drew Brees is always sort of annoying to me for various reasons too. Even before everyone got really mad at his views on the national anthem. But the Saints were never like that high. I mean, the Bears would be higher. I don't hate the Lions because you can't really.
Well, I can't. Who hates the Lions? The Lions hate the Lions, but who else hates the Lions?
I mean, the threshold, like, I probably hate the Packers practice squad the second most out of anybody in the NFL behind their main team. Like, it's that deep seated. And then beyond that, I don't really know. Like, I don't have a fondness for the Chiefs, despite the fact that my fiance is a big Chiefs fan, so I have to like sit there and actively not root against them when they're on the television, which is very difficult, by the way. Josh understands this.
Yeah, my girlfriend roots actively against the Cowboys as an Eagles fan, so I'm surprised that you're kind of hiding your hatred around her.
Well, it's not. She calls me out on it. It's not like hidden, but it's not as out there as it might have been otherwise. And I don't know. They're a fun team, so they're always on television. So it's kind of hard to like not at least enjoy the fact that when Patrick Mahomes just does Patrick Mahomes stuff, it's just incredible. It's how other people feel about Aaron Rodgers or had felt about Aaron Rodgers, but I couldn't because he's the worst. So there's that.
I did not realize this conversation was going to lead into all the things that Mike Schaefer hates.
Look, we can go a lot of directions with whatever kind.
Oh, I know. That's why we love you.
Kansas basketball got any takes on KU?
Well, I mean, if you were trying to get the ranking of teams that I hate the most in my life, the Packers would be number 1. And then I think Kansas was a real frisky number 2 team. I really dislike Kansas basketball. Yesterday was not a particularly enjoyable moment because who are you supposed to root for?
Okay, well, that was a great segment.
Oh man, bye, Shay. Oh, there he is.
Yeah. I dropped out just like the Creighton free throw shooting.
He might drop you out.
I get it. I get it. Listen, I get it. I embrace rivalry. I love rivalry.
On Friday. What am I not supposed to say anything?
Yeah, I know. And that's, what? That's the other thing, too. You got, Creighton had Kansas last night. Nebraska's got Georgia Tech, and then 2 days later played Nebraska. Oh, by the way, there's a football game on Saturday. Listen, this series already causes me great inner pain because I would just prefer that it never be played at times because then I don't have to deal with the grief. But I understand it. It's great for in-state basketball. So I'm not saying it shouldn't happen, but there's just, for me personally, it sucks. But now it's like so overshadowed because everything else is going on.
Yeah,
and the other two teams have bigger fish to fry.
Well, and unfortunately, like, there's going to be no one in the state that's really able to watch it in person. I mean, the crowd atmosphere of those games, even when they're not particularly good games, like it's just fun. I mean, I know countless Nebraska basketball fans that the win that Nebraska had in 2018 was just enormous to them, and the way that they felt and everything after that game, obviously Jack Mitchell being one of those. Speaking of which, I'm going to go watch a game on his garage tonight.
Nice.
Distance somewhere in his front yard. He's out selling tickets in South Lincoln right now. So that's the spectacle of the season right there.
Watch for the trains. There's a lot of trains now.
Schaefer, looking at football, looking at the game this weekend, we've talked a lot with you the last few weeks about the big picture stuff, about where Nebraska's at mentally, good and bad. I wonder if this might be the most engaged mentally Nebraska could be this season. And here would be the argument for it, even though I think Iowa's probably the answer, is that Minnesota embarrassed this program a year ago. And that game and the stupid hoodie thing that followed it, like that was the low point of last season. Minnesota, there is blood in the water with this program. Do you think we see maybe the best version of Nebraska football that we have in 2020 on Saturday?
You might. I mean, they played a more complete game against Iowa, and then they followed it up with a better game against Purdue. So you could make the case that they're sort of peaking as it is right now, and they're catching a Minnesota team. Ryan Burns was on my radio show yesterday. He works for the Gopher 24/7 site. He basically said they're anticipating around 55 scholarship guys being available on Saturday. And of those 55, they don't know how many starters are going to be affected, both having to sit out or if there's any contact tracing or anything going on there. So I think it's difficult to handicap what Minnesota is going to look like. He also made another remark that was sort of fascinating to me, because you brought up the bad blood. And he sort of said this offhand. He basically said that, PJ Fleck and Scott Frost have a similar relationship that PJ Fleck seems to have with every other coach in the Big Ten West. And so I don't think Nebraska's alone in this. And it just really seems like Minnesota has annoyed every coaching staff in its own division to a very large degree. I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, I expect them to be motivated. I think last year sits in their heads a little bit. But it's totally different teams for each of them. And here's another thing for you guys. I have talked to numerous people that cover programs in the Big Ten West. And to a man, the reverence that they have for Adrian Martinez and how he's looked against either their teams in 2018 or their team in 2019. And Burns talking about Adrian going for 401 yards in 2018 and just how he looked like he was the future of Big Ten football. The reverence for Adrian Martinez outside of the state in this conference is still really high. Inside the state, it has been all over the place. But there's these Big Ten West teams and Big Ten West media that really think Adrian Martinez is still a guy. And it starts there with him when they talk about Nebraska football.
So I got to imagine they probably look at Nebraska very similarly to what a lot of people always have outside of the state, and that is, what are these folks' expectations?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, and certainly it's heightened by the fact that in each of the last couple of years, Nebraska gets mentioned as a dark horse team and then falls flat on its face real early in the season, and so then you kind of get the Schadenfreude of enjoying Nebraska's misery a little bit. And I think that's kind of been the case there. But like I said, there's a lot of respect for what Nebraska's offense theoretically could be because of how Adrian played against the Illinois and Wisconsins and Minnesota's. That was probably his best game against Purdue if you look at the last couple of years. So Purdue's a little bit different. But even, at times Northwestern. And so the respect and Iowa too, that 2018 year against Iowa and then 2020 again. I mean, in the Big Ten West, Adrian Martinez has quite a bit of respect amongst, it seems, the media. And so therefore the thought process is, hey, any day he could go off and Nebraska's offense could look like what it's supposed to. Whereas around here, it's like any day he could throw 3 picks and this offense is scoring 10 points. It's just it's fun for me to sort of like try to get outside the bubble a little bit and realize that there's a lot more fear of Nebraska's offense than there is maybe even fear from inside the fan base of Nebraska's offense.
Schaefer, along those lines, I wonder what camp you're in with Adrian, because following the performance against Purdue the other day, it really seemed like there were kind of 2 camps. And one was he should have never gotten benched in the first place. That was a really bad decision, especially against Illinois. The other camp, and I'll say that I'm in this camp, is that is going to end up being the best thing that could have happened to him for whatever reason, whether it's the players saying maybe Luke's not the guy, maybe he just needed some time on the bench. I think it's going to be a positive moving forward. Are you in either of those camps, or you somehow got foot in both?
Well, I'm sure I have a foot in both. But to go back, you go back to that Northwestern game, I was right there along with everybody else thinking, it's probably time to at least see what you can do with Luke McCaffrey and if that energizes your offense. But then in the second half of the Penn State game, like, that game was such a mirage for a variety of reasons. But the second half of that game told you what this team looks like, one, without Dedrick Mills, and two, without the ability to go downfield even in the slightest. And so I guess I wasn't as shocked that they struggled so much offensively against Illinois as I was shocked that they struggled so much defensively against Illinois. But then at that point, after the first half against Illinois, I'm right there with everybody else wondering, well, do you go to Adrian Martinez here because he's at least a steady hand? You've gotten an extended look at Luke McCaffrey, and to my very uneducated view, I just don't know if he does enough that he can be a full game quarterback, if that makes sense. I think he's a guy that can be a tremendous offensive weapon for you. I think he can be a great change of pace. I love the game plan that they had against Iowa, where they brought him in, and I think that really affected Iowa's defense a little bit because he hit them on some runs. And so, I'm kind of with you, Josh, where I think that benching could really spur Adrian to kind of have a nice finish to this season, and we'll see what he carries over. But the big thing to me is that not only does Adrian have to play a little bit better, but you also need that running game to do a lot more than what they've gotten out of it this year. And it can't just be so reliant on quarterback keepers all the time. And they have to figure out how to get some other guys involved, because I think with Wandale and Xavier Betts, they have a nice 1-2 for the future. I think that Austin Allen has established himself as a tight end that could, go get 300, 400 yards in a regular season. I think they have some pieces that have emerged, and we maybe aren't acknowledging it as much because the offense still isn't averaging 35 points a game. But they need that running game to really return, because it wasn't until Divino Zigbo started going downhill that they looked like their best in 2018. It wasn't until Dedrick Mills was going downhill against Wisconsin that they looked like their best in 2019. And again, we're now 6 games in, and it's obvious that if Nebraska doesn't run the ball well with running backs, it really doesn't matter how, what wide receivers you have out there, because it just puts so much stress on your quarterback to have to be perfect, and these guys just aren't.
I've got to ask you a recruiting question, because the name Isaac Zataska keeps coming up a lot.
Good player
in my timeline. And, he just tweeted out this week that he got a preferred walk-on offer from Missouri, yet he doesn't have any major scholarship offers at this point. What gives here? What is his story? Why is there not interest from bigger schools?
Well, I think if you talk to some coaches in the Metro, he might be the most technically refined offensive lineman in Class A. And there's some good players in that group. Obviously, Teddy Prohaska is going to Nebraska. Cade Haberman from Omaha West Side's going to Northern Illinois. And I think some of it is his measurables in 2020 are just such a detriment to him. I think he's probably right around 6'2". And I just think that schools here in the Midwest view that as a pretty big detriment. And, I look at Wyoming. Wyoming's a program that I think could go in and he would make a lot of sense there. Patrick Arnold had success. He was similarly sized out of Gretna. And then you look at Coastal Carolina. They're an undefeated team right now, and they have a 5'9" center. So there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat, but he has to find the kind of place where they're not going to overlook him because of his size. But regardless of where he goes, whether it's at the FCS level, D2, or if he walks on somewhere, he's a good player. And whoever gets him is getting someone that, his ceiling might not be enormous, but his floor is pretty damn high. And you're getting a guy who's going to play for you and is going to compete for you.
Well, I can just hear the screams now, though. If he goes somewhere, a smaller school, and does well, meanwhile, Nebraska continues to struggle along the offensive line or struggles at center, there's going to be a lot of folks going, well, why didn't they get this kid?
It's tough because Nebraska has a very defined blueprint of what they want their offensive line to look like, and he doesn't fall in those parameters. And you could make the argument, well, maybe they shouldn't be that strict in what they're trying to do, but this is how they want to build their program. And I think – it's one thing if you miss on a kid who fits in those parameters and you just chose not to take him. It's another thing if the guy just didn't check enough boxes for you, then you have to reevaluate. Are you evaluating the right things when it comes to offensive line play? I think at this point we have to trust that Greg Austin knows what he's looking for, and he's accumulated some pretty good talent. And it might take a little bit longer, but I think you're going to see guys like Ethan Piper and others, Turner Corcoran, of course, and others kind of populate that offensive line. I'm not too worried about that position overall. It's just unfortunate for Isaac that he's, it just comes down to if he was 2 inches taller, it seems like he would be right there in line for some real offers.
Mike Schaefer, Husker 24/7. Schaefer, an always pleasant conversation with you, sir, even if you are trying to sabotage my Creighton Blue Jays.
All right, well, I feel good about your Rams though, so that's the best team in the NFC.
Oh, okay. Now you're definitely out of here. Every time someone mentions they're the best team, they'll come out and play crappy this week.
Who's better?
I honestly don't know.
Yeah, see, it's the Rams.
Their ceiling is the highest. It's just, but of the contenders, their floor. Well, I don't know if it's the lowest anymore after we saw the stink bomb from Seattle on Sunday. That's a low floor. Oh, that was bad.
That was the Giants. Come on, the Giants.
Okay, goodbye, Shave. I don't want to talk about the Giants.
The New York Giants, who just flexed into Sunday Night Football over your Dallas Cowboys.
Danny, he's hurt. What are you talking about?
Green Gelman, Blake Martinez,
Colt McCoy.
Colt McCoy just flexed out the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, settle down, TV ratings guy.
See you, Shave.
Bye, Shave.
All right, we will come back and have more, including what I think would be a good solution for the Big Ten and would make all parties happy.
I am very intrigued.
Next on 1620 The Zone.